What's up guys? In today's video I'm going to be teaching you the most 5 common mistakes that you make while roaming. Let's get into it. So the first mistake is going to be not playing for time. What you need to realize as roamers is your job isn't to get kills. Your job is to waste time for the enemy team. Right now we're in a gun skill meta, we're not in a plant meta, which means a lot of the rounds are coming down to the last 30 seconds. And as a roamer, you're supposed to ensure that this happens. So if you die on the roam and you get a pick and there's still 2.5 minutes left in the round, you've not done your job. It doesn't matter how many picks you get, if you get 2 kills, even 3 kills, and there's still minutes left in the round, you have not done your job properly. Now, you can blame your teammates for losing whenever they don't clutch the 5v3 or 5v2, but the fact of the matter is, you didn't help either. You didn't do your job. You may get kills, but you weren't doing your job roaming. What you need to do is waste time. You do this by killing all the drones. Once they drone you, you move so that they have to re-drone you. You kill that drone, you move, and you slowly just start backing up and letting them take space slowly, and you start making your presence slowly known so that they have to waste a bunch of time and utility trying to clear you out. That is a job as a roamer. Now, this bleeds into my second point, which is you're playing too passively. There's a difference between shooting drones, making your presence known, maybe getting into a gunfight or two, and doing your job properly as a roamer, and then just every time you get droned, you're giving them like 3 rooms of space, right? That's playing too passively. As a roamer, you're supposed to waste time. You're not supposed to just get droned out and leave immediately, which is playing too passive. You're supposed to get droned, make your presence known, shoot a few walls, make sure that they know you're there so that they have to drone you out and waste utility on you, and then back off once you've wasted enough time. Usually a good roamer will waste at least 1.5 minutes of time for the enemy attackers to be able to roam clear them. If you want to play passively, then sitting on site and anchoring is probably just a better role for you, as if you're not peeking things and you're not dying pointlessly on site, then you're doing your job as an anchorer. But people who are roaming are meant to waste time and utility and bullets on the attacking side to be able to do their job effectively. You have to be taking gunfights, but safe gunfights to ensure that you don't die but you still waste time. You need to be using your utility like impact grenades or your primary ability like Mozzie Pests or Vigil Scans to make it to where it's a lot harder to clear you. As a roamer, using gunfights and utility and playing passively but not too aggressively is the perfect potion for making you a good roamer. You don't want to be overly aggressive and take unnecessary gunfights so that you're not wasting time, which also bleeds into my third point, which is not falling back soon enough. So if you're a roamer and you've wasted 2 minutes of time, that's amazing. But a lot of times in ranks, especially plat and below, attackers will literally just push site and you being across the map doesn't help anybody. So you need to learn when to fall back to site. A good metric of when to fall back to site is if you're down in man advantage. If it's a 3v5 and there's 2 teammates on the site and they're pushing the site, you roaming isn't doing anything, and it's actually hurting your team a lot because it's an extra gun that they could be using to help clutch that's not there. So if you're down at least 2 bodies, you guaranteed need to be rotating back to site immediately. If you're down 1 and one of them was your roamer, then you could probably still stay roaming, but you need to learn when to come back to site. I see a lot of Cav players in 2v5 situations still just sitting in a corner across the map where nobody is. A lot of Vigil players that get their ego in the way of them coming back to site. If you're playing a roaming operator like Cav or Vigil, you don't need to stay off site to win the round or flank to win the round. If a lot of your teammates die and you have 1 teammate sitting in site, 1 or 2 teammates sitting in site, and they're not being helped, you coming back to site and helping them is going to be a lot more useful and get you a lot more kills than if you were to just go roam and sit there and let your team die. So you need to learn when to fall back, but not even on a large scale. You can think of this on a small scale too. You need to be learning when to fall back to certain rooms and give them space while still roaming. So if I'm on a map like Cafe where there's 3 floors and the site's basement and I'm roaming 3rd floor, you need to learn when to give them the top floor so that you can play the 2nd floor and then still have to clear you. A good metric for this is if they have piano control, they're repelled on the windows behind you, they're in bar, like there's no way you're holding upstairs anymore if they have multiple angles on you. So that's when you would rotate down a hatch or when you would rotate down the white stairs and you would give them the 3rd floor. Then once you're on the 2nd floor, you shoot some drones once they drone you out, you use your utility, you get into a few gunfights, you make a bunch of noise here, you make a bunch of noise there, and it builds anxiety and it builds a priority around you that they need to do to be able to take vertical. And by that time, they should only have 1 minute or less in the round. And they still have to get walls open, and they still have to take space on the 1st floor, and they still have to do vertical, and they still have to get kills and or the bomb down. So that is the job as a roamer, is you waste time. You give them space, but you don't give them too much space. Like I just said earlier, I'm going to keep reiterating that. You need to find a good balance and not take super risky gunfights. Now I will say, at a certain point, there are certain objectives and areas where you are roaming that you're going to need to play your life on. And it's not much, but there are some certain places. I'll give you a great example. Rafters on Clubhouse, not really roaming, but it's one of those positions where you're off-site that you need to play your life in. If the enemies take rafters, it's almost a guaranteed win for them, so playing your life and playing until you die is extremely important for rafters. This is the same example if you're playing gym and bedroom on Clubhouse. You need to play your life in cash. If they take cash control and they have highway on the 3 windows, they have an effective cutoff to any rotations through construction, and they have you locked down in the objective. They can then go below, get the wall open, take logic control, and it's an easy pinch and win for the attackers on the site. So you need to learn when to play your life, when to hold your ground as a roamer, but like I said in the past 3 points, you need to learn when to fall off as well. There's a healthy balance that you need to find, and that is what makes an effective roamer. Wasting time, trying not to waste your life, or playing your life in certain positions, and overall playing more passively than you think, but not too passive. But there are positions where you're roaming completely offsite, and this brings me into my 4th point, which is sprinting too much. If you're sprinting too much, the enemies can hear exactly where you are, and they don't need to waste drones, they don't need to waste utility finding you, and they can easily just get in gunfights with you. The whole point of roaming is to have mystery behind you, to have utility that needs to be used like drones and jackal tracks to be able to find you. That's why Cav is so good in lower ranks, that's why Vigil is so good in mid ranks, that's why Mozzie is so good in mid ranks, because it stops them from being able to hear you or see you. Now, if you're sprinting around, they don't need to do that, and your primary ability becomes completely useless. So sprinting is good if you're flanking, it's good if you're trying to get from one floor to the other, it's good if you're trying to escape, but other than that, you don't need to be sprinting. Crouch walking, alt walking, sitting, or proning, or just standing still in general is going to be your best bet once you've found the position that you're going to stay in. And I will say, you're only going to be sprinting about 10 to 20% of the time. The 80% of the rest of the round, you're going to be sitting down, you're going to be peeking angles, taking gunfights, backing off, but you don't need to be sprinting and giving away where you are to the enemy team. It's even better if you have a second roamer with you that's able to swing off of your angles so that you don't need to sprint to certain positions to take disadvantageous gunfights. Which brings me into my 5th and final point, which is not playing with the team. As a roamer, especially in ranked, there are probably going to be other roamers. If you look at any ranked game, plat and below, there's usually like 3 people off of site minimum because people don't want to sit on site, it's boring, they want to play aggressively, it is what it is. So you need to be utilizing your brain dead teammates to help you win gunfights and help you win the round. If there's a teammate roaming across the map, I would play with them instead of just taking your own roam and maybe dying and leaving your other roamer alone. If you roam with somebody, you can hold angles, you can refrag them, you can play off of their utility, and make it a lot easier for you to win rounds. A great example is if you have an alibi and they put alibi clones on the roam with them, you can swing off of the information that these clones provide. Same thing with proximity alarms from Oryx, bulletproof cameras, barbed wire, etc. If they bring utility, you can play off of it, or you can hold cross angles with them to ensure that you refrag them once they lose a gunfight. Playing with the team also ensures that if they're using one person to roam clear, you get an easy gunfight, and you always have man advantage, and you're always able to peek off of people and make it 10 times harder for them to do anything about you. This doesn't even just go for roaming, it goes for playing the game in general, on attack, on defense, anchoring, playing support, playing entry, and roaming. Always play with your team. There are times to solo push, and usually it's late in the round, and usually it's not when you're roaming, so that's why you don't want to not be playing with a team. But that's pretty much it for the 5 common roaming mistakes. In conclusion, the 5 tips I gave you were not playing for time. That is the number 1 thing you need to be doing as a roamer, is playing for time, not playing for kills. But you also don't want to be playing too passively and just giving them space. That's my 2nd point, is don't play too passive. Now, that also doesn't mean play aggressive, which leads into the 3rd point, which is not falling back when you need to. If your teammates are down, you want to be going back to site, but you also want to be establishing control and putting fear in the attacker so they have to clear you out, which is what you do as a roamer when you waste time. If you do this, however, you need to be doing it quietly, especially with people who have anti-intel operators, which is why you don't want to be sprinting too much, which is my 4th point. If you sprint too much, your utility becomes useless because they know where you are, and it's a lot easier for them to clear you because they don't have to waste utility clearing you. Now, if you sprint too much, if you're playing with a teammate, you don't have to sprint too much, as you can just watch each other's backs. Which brings me into my 5th point. You need to be playing with the team. Not the team in general, not sitting on site or near site, but just make sure you're playing with another roamer. Like I said, in ranked, there's typically another roamer, so always just try to play around them or with them or off of their utility, and you'll make it 10 times easier and more efficient to roam in this game. With that out of the way, that's pretty much it for the video. Like the video if you liked it, sub to the channel down below if you want to get better at this game. With that out of the way, my name's Alka, and I will see you in the next one. Later.